Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And it seems like no matter how much time passes or how much information is put out there, stuff like these training masks still have people who ignore all the science, ignore all the common sense about these things and say, hey, you know what, so-and-so became a whatever champion while using this mask. That proves they work. In fact, how can you say they don't work? You're an idiot. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing. Work on scaling up my crafting a little bit and let's talk about this. And that is the really scary part about human nature. And it goes to show you guys how clever marketing can be. Because people can sell something for $70, $80, $100, get a couple of champions somewhere to try it, and then if they win anything, all of a sudden the mask or the object actually works, and then people actually think that you're dumb when you say that it doesn't work. And the ironic part is they're technically the ones who are dumb, and the reason for it is they didn't go do any research. They only listened to what these athletes said. They didn't actually go look at what sports scientists said. They didn't look what biologists said, and these masks are a perfect example. Do you know why? Because there's no actual science behind them. Meaning it's not a case of someone got lucky and stumbled upon something. No, they created a fictional concept to pump out a mask. And the way it goes, they'll tell you, well, it restricts your breathing and therefore it forces you to work in a low oxygen environment, and that increases your stamina. And then people will say, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. But here's the problem with something. When we're talking about something in the human body, just because people explain something in a way that makes sense doesn't make it actually true. That's the problem we run into with clever marketing like this. And people will say, well, what do you mean? That should work. You're in a low oxygen environment. What about high altitude training? No, high altitude training, it turns out, doesn't actually improve your stamina. Why do so many athletes do it? Why do so many world champions in sports with an endurance component do it? Because they're traveling to high altitude. They're living at high altitude. They're sleeping at high altitude. It's not the training. In fact, they get less endurance improvement from the training than had they trained at sea level. It's not the high altitude training that helps. That's not what does it. It's not restricted oxygen when you're training. It's the reduced oxygen and pressure around you when you're sleeping. I'm about to sneeze here, guys. My allergies are acting up. Alright, got it under control. Okay, it's the sleeping at high altitude. Now, invariably, when you say that, you will get people who say, but I could just wear the mask when I'm sleeping then, right? What you're saying is, I should wear the mask when I'm sleeping. And you'd be surprised when you make that statement how many people say that. And you have to look at them and go, no. Wearing the mask while you're sleeping could hurt you. You're restricting your breathing. You should never ever restrict your breathing. In fact, when you have restricted breathing when you're sleeping, it's called sleep apnea. It's a medical condition. You would be replicating potentially sleep apnea, which can damage your heart. It's not a mask over your face that's restricting your breathing at high altitude. Is the reduced barometric pressure. The reduced barometric pressure that causes your red blood cell count to elevate. That gives you better oxygenation of your blood. You don't need to learn to train in a low oxygen environment. You increase endurance, you increase stamina by increasing your body's capacity to uptake and transport oxygen. That's one of the best ways it does that is through increasing hemocrite levels. That's achieved by being at a lower barometric pressure, particularly when you sleep. Now, this has been replicated by some athletes, Olympic level athletes. In some cases, people have been banned in sports. There's a fine line between whether it's cheating or not. That's the interesting thing, because it works so well that people have been accused of cheating and been found to be cheating and have had to prove that this is how they elevated their red blood cell count instead of using a drug that does it. People build decompression chambers to sleep in. Top athletes have done that, even in their own homes. There have been documented cases of Olympic athletes building decompression chambers in their home and sleeping in them at night. Now, keep in mind, this can interfere with relationships, marriages, things like that, because, you know, the wife's not real big on you sleeping 7 nights a week going into your competitive season in a chamber by yourself. Not ideal for your relationships, but if you're trying to win a gold medal, you're trying to hold on to that $5 million, $10 million contract, you might do it. If it's worth enough money to you, sure, you'll sleep in the chamber. That's what gives you the benefit. It's not putting anything over your face. That won't actually have the benefit. So in other words, the masks are completely useless. Sleeping at high altitude or sleeping in a mild decompression chamber will give you all the benefits that people get from high altitude training. And in fact, that's better. Why? Because you're now training at a higher pressure, meaning you have access to more oxygen when you're training. So when you're sleeping and recovering, you're putting your body in a state to where it adapts by increasing hematocrit levels. Then when you train, you're giving your body more oxygen to train. That combination has actually been found to be the most effective. The most effective, having access to more oxygen when you train and slightly restricted oxygen through a shift in barometric pressure around you, a lower oxygen count in the air. And it's got to be very mild because it's dangerous if it's uncontrolled. Meaning if your oxygen goes too low when you sleep, it could cause organ damage. So it's got to be properly controlled. The pressure has to be accounted for. It's got to be done the right way. But when it's done the right way, or you have people who go sleep at high altitude and then fly down to do their endurance work at low altitude or even somewhere below sea level. There are valleys and things in the world that are lower than sea level. People say, well, how does that work? Because there's no water from the sea getting to them. And they get, a few hundred yards or meters deeper than sea level. That creates an even higher oxygen content in the air per unit of air. That creates the best endurance, getting more oxygen when you're training. So you guys can see how at a certain point, this is what's the proven science. This is known. This is what produces the best endurance, the best stamina. These masks can't do that because they're not giving you more oxygen when you train. They're trying to replicate the false notion that training at high altitude and restricting oxygen and when you're training is what actually gives you the benefit. No, it's the sleeping. And the mask can't even replicate the sleeping benefit without hurting you. They're not going to give you the benefit. They're only going to hurt you. But it can be cleverly marketed. Hey, you don't have to go train at high altitude. You can wear our mask. Look at the endurance it's going to give you. And no matter how much the experts out there, and experts do say these masks are garbage, you shouldn't be wearing them. These are biologists, these are sports scientists. People who really understand the human body are saying this is stupid. This is stupid. It doesn't work. People are still buying them. Tons of people are buying them. Then they get world-class athletes who try them. And then people come out and say, well, you're an idiot. Look at a champion used it, and if it just shows it works. When people don't step back and think, you know what, champions try a lot of things. A lot of champions try 20 new things in a training season to try to get a tiny little advantage. You know what? If only 3 or 4 out of the 20 new things that they try give them an edge, and they're number 3 in the world, they now have a shot at becoming number 1 in the world because they found a couple of things that make them better. But they don't just throw one variable in. They're too busy trying to be the best, and they're trying everything and anything that they can. And here's the thing, you have someone like that, like Silva, who does that, and then he goes and wins something. Let me ask you the question. Do you really think it's the mask that made or break him? Or do you think it's the fact that he's a very, very skilled martial artist who's very dedicated, has a lot of inherent talent, has a hell of a work ethic, and he busted his ass day in and day out to get better and improve all the time? Do you think that's what it is, or do you think it's the silly-ass training mask? See, and that's the problem. The people who do that are the same people who will buy a pair of tennis shoes because Michael Jordan used them or Michael Jordan endorsed them. Therefore, that must be why Michael Jordan was such a good basketball player, is the tennis shoes, right? And how can you say the tennis shoes don't work? He used them. No, it could just be that Michael Jordan is an insanely gifted athlete with an insane work ethic to go with his talent. See, usually in a sport, that's your winning combination. It's not the gimmicks. It's not the bullshit products. It's the fact that when you have someone who is insanely gifted in a sport and they have an unusually high work ethic with that combination, that's called a champion. It's not their mask. It's not their tennis shoes. It's not the brand of belt that they wore. It's the fact that they were born to be a champion. because they have the ability and the drive to do so. That's it. It's not the mask. But the thing is, that can be marketed. Look, our mask works. This champion wore it. And see, there you go. That's proof to all the naysayers that it works. It's wonderful marketing. But it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. But look how many people buy it. It goes to show you how gullible people really are and how clever marketing can actually make asses out of people. And we see it every day, not just in the sports world. It happens all the time. But the sports world's a real good example. And these masks are one of the biggest ones we've had in fitness in the last few years. It's just marketing, guys. They don't do anything. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.